G'day ladies and gentlemen, my name is Zach and welcome back to Printed. This week I'm going to be addressing a couple of comments that I've gotten for a while and finally tackle some more Seraphon models. I know you guys have been keen to see a few of those, so today is the day that I'm going to paint up something a little bit different. Now if there is any projects that you'd like to see or things you know from the past, make sure to leave a comment down below. Today I'm actually going to be trying something that I've never done before, believe it or not. I have never ever painted a Slapchop model, and I just wanted to see how easy it is to do and kind of the process behind it, because there's a few things that I like about it, but then there's a few things that I don't quite enjoy. So without further ado, we're going to be jumping into that right now. To get started, we're just going to be building our colors up from a black primer. To begin with, you do want to use a color that is kind of thick. I actually attempted to do this with some white ink and it did not go well. The ink is way too runny and it just won't do what you need it to. I ended up just grabbing my scale 75 white and my cheap makeup brush that I actually use as a dry brush. Now I think I got this thing from Kmart for about $2, so make sure to check around your shops like Kmart, Target, or sort of the cheaper places. You can find some absolute bargains when it comes to hobby tools. Now we want to start by doing a very light coat over everything. Like with anything, we want it to be smooth, and if you need to, you can always add more. It's much harder to take away and a lot more steps. As you can see, I'm mostly focusing on areas that are kind of upwards that are going to catch light, especially on things like the shield. You can sort of see here that when I'm doing it, I'm kind of focusing it on that top section, and I do sort of do a reflection just down on the bottom. As for the sort of model in general, I'm mostly focusing on the areas around like the face, because we want that to be a focal point, and other areas like his back and things that just point directly up to the light. When it came to his chest and that kind of stuff, I did want to actually put a little bit of color on here. Now, it's not going to be fully opaque white, so I just went over with a very light coat. I did make sure that I slowly built this up over a couple of layers, and as you can see now, it comes up very nicely. Now this is what it looks like after doing a couple of coats, and as you can see, I've really focused that white color all the way to the top and created a couple of gradients in the back there. Now I did want to sort of reinforce this a little bit, so I grabbed a smaller dry brush and just went over the areas that I couldn't get my big one into. This is a bit of a tip that I found while doing this and really helps make certain areas pop that you want them to, instead of just kind of waiting for the randomness to do all the work for you. Now the dry brush kind of made some of the areas a little bit too sketchy for my liking, so what I did is I just grabbed that original color that we were dry brushing with, grabbed my detail brush here, and very lightly went over the things that I wanted to reinforce and make pop. Now you can completely avoid this step. This is just kind of something that I'm doing since I'm only painting one model. But if you're army painting and doing that kind of thing, you probably don't want to do that for these guys. Just the single to double dry brush of the white is plenty. Next up, this is another optional step if you want to do it, but I did come in with some contrast black paint and just gently glaze it into the shadows. Doing this does increase the contrast, but again, it is a lot of extra work and you probably don't want to be doing it for all of your chaff troops. You might want to keep it to things like the unit leaders, or more realistically, things like your captains and that. It's definitely an optional step and you don't have to do it. Now, the next step is actually the funnest part of painting Slapchop models. And basically what we're going to be doing is grabbing any contrast paint of your choice and slapping it on both the belly and behind on all those scales. Now, you don't have to choose the exact same colors that I did, but you can kind of just mix it around and add little patterns and things and really have some fun with this. So for mine, I'm actually going to start on the belly, and I'm grabbing some Flesh Tearers red and just going over everything that I want to be that color. As you can see, our little zenithal that we've got really picks out a lot of the details, and our contrast paint doesn't have to do all of the work. That light value underneath is really what makes it pop. Next up, for all the scales of the model, I'm just going to be choosing some Talisar blue. Now this paint is super transparent and goes on nice. As you can see, the scales pick it up really well. Models like Seraphon are amazing things for contrast paint. Since they've got all these scales and sort of details that it can sink into, it really makes them pop and it's so much fun to do. Now I just went over the entire thing, and you want to make sure that you're not too thick with the paint here. You can go overboard and then it kind of floods all the details and makes it look weird. I find that if I wick off most of the paint and actually paint it on instead of using it like a shade, it has much better coverage and allows me to see a lot more of those details from that dry brush that we did. And when it comes to the points where it transitions between the red and the blue, what you can do is actually kind of feather it between the two, or even draw a pattern so that when you put the Talisar blue over that, it blends it really nicely. Now for the next step, I'm actually not going to be using a contrast paint. Instead, I'm going to be using Seraphim Sepia. Now I'm going to chuck this on anything that we want to be gold. Since I'm more or less going for a shade slash, we'll call it contrast style paint job, I'm just going to put this over anything that needs to be gold and tint it down. Now, being a shade, it's actually not going to work as good as a contrast paint. So all I'm going to have to do is just slap it on all the details that I want to be this color, and then just come back in with another layer. You could grab another sepia style contrast paint that's a little bit thicker like Wildwood and just water it down with some contrast medium and chuck it on and get a very similar effect. Alright, as you can see, I've let the shade dry a little bit and I'm just going to come back in with another coat. Now with this one, I will be slapping it over everything, but I'm going to come in with another coat that I don't have a video for and just kind of sort of shade it in the areas that I want to be darker. This really helps push the contrast and give us that gold effect. You could also, if you have a gold paint on you, instead of using this sort of method, you could come in and shade it with like something like Retributor Armor, a paint like that, and then put a little bit of Seraphon Sepia, or even like an Agrax Earth shade over the top, and that would give you the same effect. It does take a little bit longer, and it is a true metallic metal, but we're going for speed here, so we're going with this Seraphon Sepia mix. As you can see now, the model is looking amazing, but I do want to come back in and shade his sword slash bashing axe in. For this, I'm actually going to be using some Black Legion contrast paint, which might seem contrary to what you want, but if you water it down, and I'm just using water for this, nothing too fancy, it's actually going to turn a little bit more transparent, and we can gently glaze this over everything. As you see, I've just chucked a little bit of water in my palette there, and we're just going to mix it in nicely. Now, there's no exact science to this. I'm more or less just going to the point where I feel like it's transparent enough. And I may have gone a little bit too transparent with this first coat. Now, as you can see, I'm just chucking it on, and it will actually give us a little bit of that zenithal information that we've painted in and really make it pop. Now that that's all nice and dry, we're just going to be coming in and doing a coat with some Skeleton Horde. Now, all of this is actually just going to be put over the ropes and things. I did a bit of a sketchy job on this one because I was in a little bit of a crunch. Although I use Skeleton Horde, I'd probably recommend using something like Wildwood as it is a little bit more opaque and kind of makes it look a little bit more ropey. But for the sake of speed and everything, we're just going to be using some Skeleton Horde, and it gets the job done. Alright, for the most part, you can just leave your model there, and that is basically everything done and dusted. But I'm going to chuck some Vallejo thick mud on the base, because for my Seraphon, I like to do like a really cool lava-based thing, because my whole headcanon is that they're fighting the Chaos Dwarves, and as the Dwarves are advancing through the forests and the jungles that they have, it is burning the landscape and basically turning it into a bit of a hellhole. Because I do have plans of starting a Chaos Dwarf army, but they're very well in the future, so I gotta get these guys done first so they actually have someone to battle. Now, I'm sort of moving away from the contrast paints right here, and instead just going some pale sand, and I'm going to pick out areas that I want to be a little bit lighter. Things like his teeth, I'm actually going to pick out his eyeball for this one as well. Now, you want to be very careful when you're doing this and not get it on any of the contrast paint areas, because it is very, very hard to clean up. So right here, I'm just gently dragging the tip of my brush over the teeth, and this picks it up really, really nicely, and is a very, very easy thing to do. Just make sure that when you're trying to do detailed stuff like this, you are resting your hands down, because it does make life so much easier. Now, don't forget that even when we're doing his teeth, we do want to pick out areas like his claws, just to make them pop just a wee bit. Now, I'm just going to call the model done right there, and we've just got one more step to do, which is finishing up his base. Now, I just picked out a red, an orange, and a yellow here, and I'm going to be blending them on the base. You more or less want to come in with them slightly watered down, but not too much. And we're going to make sure that we're doing the steps really quickly, because I'm unfortunately in a place that dries very, very fast. So I'm going to come in with the red first, sketch out where I want the lava to be popping through. And then for the next steps, I'm just going to be wet blending orange and yellow through it. Now, I'm going to just speed this all up so you can get the full process and understand exactly what I'm doing. But once we've got one color down, I'm going to come in with the next one and do a slight blend on maybe, say with the orange, 80%, or even maybe 60% of it, just to give that kind of vibrant lava look. And then for the yellow, I want to be very selective with this. If we're coming in with the yellow and putting it over everything, it's just going to look a little bit weird. And seeing as these colors are nice and wet right now, we can also come back in, and if I've gone over the yellow like this, a little bit overboard, I can just use my orange to really bring it back and just sell that effect. Last but not least, we do have to quickly do the rim of the base. Now, for my Seraphon, I do actually use black as per usual for pretty much every painting tutorial nowadays, and it just helps clean everything up and make it look really nice. Now, everyone, it is time for the grand reveal. As you can see, it's a really simple model, but I think with all the steps that we've taken, it really pops and just kind of shines on the table. The base combined with the red and the blue, I think just makes him look kind of cool. And for whatever reason, it's reminding me of something, maybe a mascot or some sort of fun character. If you know or have anything that sort of has like a red and blue scheme, let me know in the comments down below. I think it'd be really cool to find a character that looks kind of similar to this. Huge shout out to everyone who has reached this far in the video. If you did indeed enjoy it, make sure to leave a like on it. And if you're new here, I would love to see your beautiful face in amongst all of our other hobby heroes. So make sure to subscribe to join our amazing community. So until next time, everyone, happy hobbying. Bye.